What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about the winners and losers of the trade deadline. This video will be about the Western Conference. But before we start, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to go check out the video I did on the East if you haven't watched it already. The first team I'm going to talk about is the Los Angeles Clippers, and they're right in the middle. But I'm going to say they're slight winners. They made a couple of trades at the deadline, but no big upgrades or downgrades. The first trade they made was with the Jazz, where they sent PJ Tucker, Mo Bamba, a second-round pick in 2030, and cash to the Jazz for Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills. This trade didn't do much, but it did slowly upgrade their backup center role. It wasn't much of an upgrade, but it was an upgrade nonetheless. They also reunited Patty Mills with James Harden when they played in Brooklyn, and also Kawhi from when they played in San Antonio together. The second trade they made was a straight-up swap with Milwaukee between MarJon Beauchamp and Kevin Porter Jr. I don't know why the Clippers would trade away Porter Jr. when he was having a decent season for MarJon Beauchamp, who struggled to get minutes even when Milwaukee were desperate for wins. Clearly, the Clippers GM sees more in Beauchamp than I do. And the last trade they made was with the Hawks, where they sent out Terrence Mann, Bones Hyland, and 3 second-round picks to Atlanta for Bogdan Bogdanovic. Terrence Mann has been on the roster for ages and hasn't gotten much playing time this year, so they decided to move him on to get more shooting, and Bogdan Bogdanovic, who hasn't been that good this year, but still an elite shooter. Moving on to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm gonna say they're losers. They had a chance to trade for a true star like Jimmy Butler or Brandon Ingram with all their depth and draft picks, but they decided to keep their roster pretty much the same, except for one small move where they traded Marcus Smart and their 2025 first-round pick to the Wizards and Jake LaRavia to the Kings for Marvin Bagley, Johnny Davis, and 2 second-round picks. I don't quite get why the Grizzlies will do this trade. Yes, I know for roster flexibility, but giving up a first-round pick for it doesn't make total sense, especially when they only get Marvin Bagley and Johnny Davis, who have both been known as draft busts. But I guess with the Grizzlies' injury history, it's never a bad thing to have too much depth. Up next is the Utah Jazz, and they are losers. They made quite a few moves, but not as much as they should have. They had the perfect opportunity to get a lot back from John Collins and Colin Sexton, but just like the Nets, they decided to stay put, which I just don't understand. Moving on to the moves they did make. They involved themselves in a Luka trade without knowing it. They received Jalen Hood-Schifino, who they waived, if I'm not wrong, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but they also received 2 2025 second-round picks. They then traded Dennis Schroeder, Lindy Waters, and a second-round pick, which they acquired from the Jimmy Butler trade to Detroit for KJ Martin. As part of the same trade, they acquired Josh Richardson and another second-round pick for PJ Tucker. If we're talking about what they gave up, I'd say they're winners. But when you factor in what they could have got for some of their guys, I'd say they're big losers. The next team up is the Sacramento Kings, and I'd say they're slight losers. They traded away their best player, and while they did get a player back that's close to his level, he doesn't fix any of their problems. The first trade they made was trading De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin for Zach LaVine City Sissoko, 3 first-round picks, and 3 seconds, but will more than likely turn into 2 firsts and 5 seconds. They traded newly acquired City Sissoko and 2 second-round picks to Washington for Jonas Valanciunas, which didn't make total sense considering they already have Domantas Sabonis. The last move they made was trading Colby Jones and Alex Len to Washington again for Jake LaRavia from the Grizzlies as part of a 3-team trade. I don't love a Zach LaVine fit with the Kings when you already have DeMar DeRozan on your team mixed in with Sabonis. The defense isn't going to be great, but they do have Keon Ellis, Malik Monk, and now Jake LaRavia, who are all decent defenders. Moving on to the Los Angeles Lakers and their massive winners for the future, but losers right now. Somehow the Lakers did it again, as if the Lakers don't have enough legends and Hall of Famers in their history. They just got another one. The first trade they made was sending D'Lo, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 second-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. This was a great trade for the Lakers. Finney-Smith has been a huge part of the Lakers' defense this season, along with Jared Vanderbilt, and he has been knocking down his threes. They then made the biggest trade, not of the deadline, but maybe one of the biggest trades we'll ever see in sports history. They traded Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and the 2029 first-round pick to the Mavericks for Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris. They then tried to trade for a center, trading Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, a 2031 unprotected first-round pick, and a 2030 pick swap to the Hornets for Mark Williams, but the trade got rescinded because the Lakers weren't happy with the injury the Hornets didn't tell them Mark Williams had, or something like that. But for now, the Lakers aren't winning a championship with this roster, so I'd say they're losers, but definitely set for the future. The next team up is the Dallas Mavericks, and they are both winners and losers, depending on how you look at it. They only made 2 trades at the deadline, and they're both quite questionable. The first trade they made was trading Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. I see what Nico Harrison was trying to do, trying to make the team better, but trading your 25-year-old franchise player for a couple of year window to compete for a championship is a massive gamble, especially when you have to compete against teams like the Thunder and the Celtics. Then to rub the salt in the wounds of the Mavericks fans, they traded Quentin Grimes, who was one of their most consistent players with them, and a second-round pick to Philly for Caleb Martin. If the Mavericks don't win a championship with AD, then they'll be one of the biggest losers across all deadlines. The next team up is the Denver Nuggets, and they are big losers. They didn't make one move at the deadline, and with the roster they've got, that is a massive problem. Both their defense and offense has a lot to be desired, and them not making one move just puts them in a bigger hole. But when you have Nikola Jokic on your roster, you're a contender to win every game, I guess. He's the only player I've ever seen as truly unguardable, other than Shaq, in a very long time. To be fair to their GM, there's not a lot on their roster they can trade that's very valuable. Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans, and they're probably the biggest losers of the deadline. They have such a good roster when everyone's healthy and firing, but unfortunately, no one has been able to stay healthy since the Zion Williamson era began, and this year was the tip of the iceberg. So they decided trading Brandon Ingram was the best thing to do. But they haven't picked a direction that they want to go in. It's very clear they aren't even close to winning a championship. So instead of trading Ingram and getting back young players and picks, they traded him for win-now players like Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, which makes no sense. They also traded Daniel Tice and a 2031 second-round pick to the Thunder for cash. So instead of trading a player for draft capital, they traded away both and got nothing in return. I think it's pretty safe to say they're the losers of the deadline. Next up is the Houston Rockets, and they're right down the middle. They didn't risk messing up team chemistry and decided to keep their roster the same. They only made 2 very minor trades where they sent out a 2031 second-round pick to the Celtics for Jaden Springer, who they later waived, a 2027 and a 2030 second-round pick. The second and last trade they made was with the Hawks, where they sent the draft rights to Al Fakaba in exchange for Cody Zeller, who they also waived, and a 2028 second-round pick. I would have liked if they went out and got a Brandon Ingram type player, but I'm fine with them keeping their young core together. Up next is the San Antonio Spurs, and they're big winners. They were able to land one of the best players on the market. The big move they made was trading Sidi Sissoko, a 2025 lottery-protected pick, via the Hornets. The Spurs own 2027 pick. In the Timberwolves 2031 first-rounder they acquired during the draft for Rob Dillingham. To the Kings and Trey Jones, Zach Collins, and the Bulls pick for this upcoming draft to the Bulls for De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The fact they were able to land a star like Fox without giving up a player like Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, or that value of a pick is insanity. Moving on to the Phoenix Suns, and they're massive losers. The Suns are screwed for right now and for the future. The youngest players on their roster are tied at 22 years old in Ryan Dunn and also Higodaro, and they don't own their own first-round pick until 2031, and they're sitting as the 11th seed. The first trade they made was sending Josh Okogie and 3 second-round picks to the Hornets for Nick Richards and a second-round pick. Later on, they made another trade with the Hornets, where they finally got to dump Yusuf Nurkic's contract and a 2026 first-round pick for Cody Martin, Micic, and a second-round pick. They did make another trade where they acquired 3 first-rounders from the Jazz for their 2031 first-round pick, but I don't think half of the NBA fanbase even knew that happened. But surely the Suns will trade Kevin Durant at the end of the year and get something back going into the future. The next team up is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I can't say they're winners or losers because they did absolutely nothing. I mean, why should they? They're one of the heavyweights for the championship and have one of, if not the best roster in the league. I lied. They did make some moves. The first trade they made was sending a Suns 2029 second-round pick to the Hornets for a conditional Nuggets 2030 second-round pick. And the last trade they made was sending cash to the Pelicans for Daniel Tice, who they later waived, and a 2031 second-round pick. They have close to the best depth in the league. It's very close with the Grizzlies, but I don't know how much of their depth will go in their playoffs. Their backup unit is Cassian Wallace, Isaiah Joe, Alex Caruso, Aaron Wiggins, and Jalen Williams. It would have been nice if they could have used a couple of their 500 picks to go and trade for another wing with size. But clearly, Sam Presti has faith in his squad, and if he does, so do I. Up next
Chases it down to
is the
Minnesota.
Timberwolves.
Edwards
And they
down
are
the lane.
massive.
Finger roll for two.
Timberwolves are nowhere
Plus the
close
foul.
to winning a championship with this roster. And the lack of roster
Smith out of
flexibility
control.
has
Turned it
been
over.
the second opening. So they were
18.9.
unable to make any moves at all.
Going at Smith.
There were
The
reports about
floater
them wanting to
makes
trade
it look easy.
Julius Randle,
A lot
but
of
they
that came in
decided
the
to
first
keep
half.
him and see how things
McDaniels, the
go through
crossover,
to
the
end of year.
decel, the
With Mike
bucket,
Conley getting
and the
older.
foul.
And Dante
Edwards
DiVincenzo
has the defense
being
of the
out
Suns.
most, if not
And
the
good
rest
help
of the
defense.
regular
Clark
season.
ahead to
So it's going to be
Shannon.
tough,
Throws
and
it
it has been
down.
tough at times for them to win games, and especially a playoff series. Up next is the Portland Trail Blazers and their losers. Just like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Blazers didn't make one move at the deadline. The Trail Blazers are not trying to win now, and they have 2 to 3 players that are not in their timeline, in Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams, and depending on how you see him, DeAndre Ayton. But for whatever reason, the Blazers decided to keep on to them, or their trade value was pretty high. The Trail Blazers probably could have gotten a similar package to what the Hawks got for DeAndre Hunter, and you're telling me that I'd rather keep Jeremy Grant than trade him for a couple of second rounders or even a first rounder if a team was desperate enough.
Down to 13.
Last team up is the Golden State Warriors.
Jemski an open
And
three.
they're going to be winners.
Brandon right now.
They were able to
Throws it
land
on Curry.
a star like Jimmy
Bonus
Butler,
flats him out to
and they didn't
midcourt.
have to give up that much.
Moody out of the corner.
Before we
Hits a
talk about
three.
the trade,
And draws the foul.
let's go
He
back
was pointing
to
at the
the first
official. He
trade
almost
they made.
ghosted him like Steph. He
It
was
was quite a
pointing at
while before the deadline.
But he
But they
didn't
traded
force that.
D'Anthony
Curry
Melton.
sidestep
It
three.
was out for the year. Reese
Oh,
Beekman
a great decision
and
by
3
Buddy
second
Hield
round
right
picks
there.
to the
He's
Nets
done a great job
for
taking
Dennis
care of the
Schroeder
ball. Can you do that the rest
and a
of the game?
2025 second round
Buddy
pick.
Hield dropping in a
They
three.
made the big Jimmy
Calming
Butler
presence,
trade
adults in the room
where they
vibe.
sent Andrew Wiggins,
Butler setting up Buddy
Kyle
Hield.
Anderson,
And Buddy
and
Hield
protected
with 22.
2025
Someone told Buddy
to
tonight is
Miami.
still the three-point contest.
Dennis Schroeder,
Butler and
Lindy
DeRozan.
Waters,
What a fun
and the
matchup.
2031
Shot clock at
second
2.
rounder to Detroit.
Corner
for
three.
Jimmy
It's
Butler, 2
good.
second round
Mr.
picks
Curry!
and cash from the Heat. They were able to steal
But
Jimmy
you laid it
Butler
out
away,
perfectly at the beginning of the
who's been
fourth.
really good
Get a
the
shot
first 2
up.
games
And
he's
Moody
played
does
in
with
Golden
another
State,
three.
where he's dropped 20 points a couple of times. Pretty much the same player.
Snap for the
with a
shot
little
clock
less
at
quality
5. Step back
than
three,
him.
and he's already running
A couple
back.
of role
Shots
players
for a
that haven't been
second.
great for the
Jeez.
Warriors this year. And
Kevin
one
Knox
first round pick
dropping in a
that should
three.
be
There you go.
in the late teens. That's going to end this video. Make sure to comment down below who the biggest winners and losers of the trade deadline are, and like the video and subscribe if you haven't already.